guys, what's going on? It's Breacher. I've got a couple of topics to talk about. I'd usually cover them in a daily, but as you guys are aware, I am now a father and I'm still getting into a routine. So dailies should commence again, probably on Monday. I'm hoping on Monday we can get back into the routine of dailies. Not to say people haven't been sending me tons and tons of stuff to talk about, so I'm going to break it down here. I'm playing a little bit of Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. At the time of recording this, the WoW EU servers just aren't letting anyone log in, which is a bit of a pain in the ass. I just wanted to grab a little bit of footage and grab some items for the upcoming guides. Right, first and foremost, congratulations to Asia on their 10-man kill. I can't pronounce the guild name. I just can't read it. I'm sorry. It's 2 symbols. It's probably 20 words. I'm ignorant. But I can't pronounce it. And congratulations to Method, of course, for picking up the 25 heroic in the EU. Wow, what a toxic fucking community. My God. I don't think I've ever seen such a heavily moderated thread as the world first thread on MMO Champion. Those mods have been working their ass off. And not only that, it's actually seeped into the community. Surprisingly enough, even into Stark, which is kind of like the offshoot guild of Preach Gaming, where all the guys have gathered up and have started to raid and learn and do all those kind of things in a nice environment. They're awesome guys. But I've seen this conversation over and over again, especially as people have learned how cool it is, the heroic raid progression. We got lost in the mire for a long time, PvE, and I do feel like it's coming back in a big way. This was one of the most exciting races that I've actually watched for a while, and I think that is pretty damn cool to see people are taking a vast interest in the PvE race, and they're sort of starting to understand what's involved for those guys and how important and how good those players are. It's very easy to say, oh, well, this guy has 3k arena points or whatever it is now, and then say, well, that doesn't mean anything because these guys are just PvEers, lol, scripted events and whatnot. The problem is, what a toxic fucking community. And it has felt that in a lot of ways the community has got more and more toxic, especially towards just being outright rude. Not to say it wasn't even in vanilla. It was. There was assholes everywhere, right? So, but the actual response to the kills and the amount of trolling going on is just unbelievable. The problem is as well, people are picking up on it and grabbing it with both hands and dragging themselves into this troll situation. I actually asked a couple of guys about this thread and what they thought, and a lot of them don't care. This is an important thing to remember, is the top guilds in the world do not give a shit about any of the opinions of these uninformed people. This is kind of the problem, right? People have a little bit of information and they run with it, or they have some opinion based on nothing, and then they just stick to it like glue. It's been one of the most hardest things about running a channel that does a lot of guides and teaching people, is allowing people to say, perhaps I'm wrong. Right? A lot of people hate that, especially in video games, is that maybe you're wrong or maybe you're doing something wrong. They hate that. It's gear that's at fault. It's gems that are at fault. My reforging is at fault. It certainly isn't my uber gameplay, and my knowledge of this game outweighs massively. Not to say I've got 100% record. Absolutely not. Made many, many mistakes in my time, but what the hell do you expect when you make so many guides? So what we had is Asia picking up the world first 10-player heroic Garrosh Hellscream fight, which by all accounts is an okay fight. Not super spectacular. Siegebreaker seems to be the winner of this tier, so look forward to that on your heroic progression. But they did in fact pick up the world first, and that then was open game. That was fair game for everybody to just start going, oh, well, everybody else sucks. Asia took the fucking biscuit, and then, of course, Method picks up the 25 heroic, and then it was, oh, well, you know, it's not technically a world first. And the word technically has been thrown around so many times, it actually makes me physically sick to read it. So what's the situation and what's the story? I mean, what do I think of it? This is mostly the question I'm getting. So what do you think? Does it count? Does it count? Of course it fucking counts. Of course it counts. For Asia, how can you take away from the guys who defeated him first? Are you mad? Of course it counts. It counts for Asia. You don't think there are so many guilds in the Asian community who are fighting for that world first, and they picked it up first. That is, of course, hugely important for Asia. That's the important thing. It's for Asia. The issue is, of course, the boundaries by which the race is determined. And I see a lot of people who are basically the same person constantly re-spamming the same things in the forums just to keep feeding people who are like, no, I'm a bit fanboyish. You've got to defend the guilds. The guilds are, by the way, I repeat, do not care. They absolutely do not care, but you see the fanboys fighting their little hearts out against the trolls who are just posting, oh, well, technically Asia won anyway. I think an important lesson was learned. And in fact, it's interesting to me, and again, you want to congratulate both the guilds so far and everybody else who picks it up, is that realistically, we should be seeing the bosses killed first in Asia from now on. It actually changes the whole paradigm. The situation in Asia really changes the paradigm. If you're not sure of the situation, they get double lockouts and higher item level gear. That's kind of important. MMO Champion reported that the group that killed Heroic Garrosh and 10 Man had 573 plus item level, compared to the EU guilds who had about 565. That's a huge difference, because that is across the entire raid. The difference that makes is pretty incredible, right? So that gear is important. What we should be seeing in the future, by all accounts, realistically, is that pretty much all the bosses get killed first in Asia, at least on the 10-man. The 25-man bosses are tweaked in a way to make them more difficult comparatively to the 10. It's a lot of tricky stuff going on in the Asian community, but as such, it doesn't compare to what goes on in the EU and US. It's just a different race altogether. Not that it's less important. What we can take away from this, and I think this is really important for a lot of the guilds who are doing progress in the EU and US, is that they have the ability to actually see these bosses die and take away the information that the bosses are killable. This is the big message that came back, is that, oh, we got to see that the fight was indeed killable. That's an important lesson, because there have been so many fights where the bosses just simply weren't killable. And they weren't sure exactly, was it an item level issue? Is this fight just overtuned? What are we going to see here? A lot of references to that, such as Lady Vash. People just believe Lady Vash was not killable until Method killed it. I will not reference the Nihilum cheese kill. And then, of course, we have things like Alone in the Dark, which, of course, Stars picked up. I believe it was Stars. I want to say it was Stars. And then, of course, other bosses like Heroic Lich King, where Paragon proved against all odds that it was, in fact, doable. There's a big question when you're raiding ahead of the curve, that there are no videos, there are no boss kill guides, you have to make your own add-ons. Is the boss even doable? You'll come up against a situation where your first 100 pulls result in a wipe and he's berserking, and he's still got 40% HP left, and you're thinking, do we need to tweak something? What do we do? When I saw that the Asians had in fact killed Heroic Garrosh, I took away the information as, oh, he's totally killable. Is it a gear level issue? Will we have to wait for the other guys to have another reset full of gear to get it down? And yeah, this is great. This is almost a comfort for those guys. It's a great comfort to see that the boss is indeed doable. So you can actually take that information away and then judge things based on item level, what was their raid setup, maybe what tactics they were using, something we hadn't thought of. But the race itself doesn't actually affect the EU-US race in any way. A lot of people go on about the one-day head start. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, the one-day head start in EU and US. That only matters, in my opinion anyway, people have different opinions, I'm sure you'll leave yours, that only matters in the first week. Once that first week is out of the way, it's fair game, because the same amount of allotted time has been given. It does cause a problem if the tier is very easy. So let's suppose that to make this one-day head start worthwhile, is there are two scenarios which could really screw up the Heroic race, which I take great interest in. And that is, before the EU servers come up, all the bosses are dead. Is that the fault of anybody in the US? Absolutely fucking not. The tier is bullshit. And yes, it'll go down in history as, say, Blood Legion or whoever went ahead and they got the Heroic first Garrosh Hellscream kill before the EU servers came up. That's not the way it will be remembered. It will be remembered as Blood Legion got the world first or whatever. And that's the important thing. And that's when that one-day head start really counts. It also counts kind of into the second day if they went, say, 13 out of 14. And Method simply, or whoever, Midwinter, whoever they might be, the competing guild, simply did not have enough awake time to possibly catch up. Because while they're still raiding, the American guys are having a rest before they go in for the final battle. So that's the only problem with the first day head start. As far as most people are concerned who know about it, is if it's going to run less than the first day or less than a week, then that one day head start really, really matters. The other time that it matters, and it does matter, is if Blizzard are going to alter the boss during reset, because that's a big problem. And we saw that last tier with the Twins. Okay, we saw the Twins were nerfed over the reset, and what happened is both guilds were very close to a kill. Do not underestimate. I think, according to the Method guys on the Twins, they had a 2% wipe and were very sure that boss was killable in its current state, and absolutely killable in the next reset's worth of gear. Unfortunately, they did not get the kill. What happens is Blizzard alter the boss over the reset. Then your 1 day head start comes in, and your earlier uptime of the new servers after the fix really comes into play, because quite frankly the US would then have an easier boss to kill and then move on to the next boss, and that's terrible. If you've got two guilds going head to head like we had last tier, like we had in the Throne of Thunder, where we had Blood Legion and Method chomping at the bit to down the twins, and then at reset the boss remains unkilled. Over that reset, that boss gets nerfed, and then they come back in, kill an easy boss, and go on about their business. Then you've got a little situation to bear in mind. You can watch the video of the first kills where they actually one-shot that boss because it had been nerfed so dramatically compared to its original incarnation. Other than that, though, the 1 day head start doesn't mean a goddamn thing. If the tier is too easy, that's Blizzard's fault. If the boss has been tweaked, that's Blizzard's fault. And it's not the fault of the US or EU, and it certainly doesn't affect the race. You can easily check the Twitter of these guys and see that they don't really give a fuck, okay? The fact is, Asia has its own race, and it's not to be underestimated because there are very good guilds over there. Difficult for us to follow as we can't even pronounce the guild names, but in their own way, they're doing really well. They have a much higher item level, they have different sort of boss and health numbers, so it doesn't affect the EU-US race. And the EU-US race becomes fair after the first week, providing there are no random nerfs to content and then suddenly the bosses are a pushover that were previously the cock blocks. That's my opinion. Put your own down. The second thing you guys have been emailing about, oh my god. You know, I've never managed to speak to Rignaros. I of course know who he is. Absolutely. Raid leader of Blood Legion and considered the main tank. And the video of him raging uncontrollably at an innocent little priest during Primordius Heroic. I'm not going to show the footage. You can put the link down below and you can click it and you can have a watch of it. And the absolute, again, toxic community response there of, lol, this is just a game. What a fucking nerd. And you guys responded as like, do you think this is way over the top? This reaction is crazy. This is insane how he reacted to this guy. I would have felt terrible. It's still, wow, there's no need to speak to somebody like that. No. Wrong. So effing wrong. My god, did he play it pretty much correctly. And he was not just the voice of him there. That is the voice of every member of fucking Blood Legion in that raid. Let me break something down for you that actually happened to me where I could have used Rignaros in my fucking raid. As a trial, in a top guild, I was asked to come along to a certain fucking raid. Now, you've got to understand that if you play at a certain level, there are certain expectations. This raid that I was invited to come on my alt to tank, he asked me to come along and tank this dungeon for them on Heroic, should have taken, because of the level of the guild, about an hour. This was around 10 AM, okay? This is about 10 AM. So I get asked, hey, do you want to come and tank it? We're just doing an alt run to this raid. Do you want to come along and tank it for us? Sure, I'll come along and tank it. Why not? I have a fucking easy raid, old content. I think it was a tier behind but at the current level we were at. Sure, I'll come along, pick up a couple of pieces of gear for maybe DPS spec or whatever. No problem. So everybody who gets invited to that raid, I expect to have about an hour and a half raid. And you also know the bosses that you might possibly wipe on, okay? Those are the problem bosses. That's where we're going to have an issue. What happened to me is we couldn't get past the first boss. What actually happened is a few randoms came along. Friends of friends who had no fucking business being in a raid with our level of play, okay? This was in kill count loss. We were a world 60th guild. They had no fucking business being in a raid with myself because frankly, they did not know how to play. And they couldn't do the fights. What we considered easy, found incredibly challenging to those players. What resulted is it was coming on to 3 PM and we were still on the first boss. Now I'm getting to the situation where I need to leave. I need to leave. And I'm telling these people, look, I've got to go. And they're like, you can't leave. We've got to, we've got to finish the raid. And it turns out that the guy who had organised this raid was in fact trying to get some e-pussy out of it. And as such, didn't rage, just let's wipe and go again. And it was clear these people were not supposed to be there. There are whispers amongst the fellow members of the guild who are in the raid saying this is bullshit. I can't believe we got trapped in this raid. But it's your guild and you feel some sort of reason to stick around and be helpful. My god, would I have given everything for a Rignaros. I suggest you watch that fucking video and see how many skeletons are on that floor and how many wipes that must have taken to be there. Because that was some rage-filled situation. Now, I don't know the exact circumstances. I don't pretend to know the circumstances. But I can tell you right now that the rage that you feel when you're bringing along people who are used to killing bosses, used to getting them down, and not used to people fucking up constantly, especially after many, many wipes, is infuriating because it's such a waste of your time. There have been many occasions when I've asked really good players if they wanted to come along to do some raid, do a pickup group, whatever. And then I've seen that a few randoms have joined and I've whispered them and said, don't come. This is going to be a waste of your time. We're not going to be killing things quickly. You don't want to be a part of this because we take care of their time. When people rage like that, it's because their time has been atrociously wasted. And that is unimaginably bad because your group is angry. They never want to come along again. They're not used to this style of play. In fact, they've worked hard, more than likely, to avoid these kind of raids. They've worked very hard to avoid these kind of raids. And they're coming along for fun on alts to have a good time. So I've never had a chance to speak to Riggy. I don't understand a certain situation. But I can absolutely empathise with that level of rage when you find that there is a player, and he's more than likely extremely angry at himself for not realising that this player had been such a detriment to the group for so long. Don't underestimate that this is just a game when this game is taking up huge amounts of your time for things that you do not need to be doing. Try and put yourself in a situation of a task that should take you about an hour, and then many hours later you're still doing it. You are infuriated. Regardless of how trivial or relaxing this task is supposed to be, it absolutely angers you no end, especially when it's costing you repair bills, it's costing you in time, you could be doing other things, you might have other things planned for the day which are now becoming a little bit of a problem. You're going to have to abandon the raid group, you're going to have to find replacements, and in general you're just all out angry because you came along to have some fun. That's the be-all and end-all of it. You came to have some fun, and now it's turned into a giant pile of shit. Alright guys, that was my comment on it. Have a good day. I'll see you soon.